1 to 3 million people have been leaving church consistently for the last 7 years in the United States of America. That's a pretty alarming statistic.
People are leaving in droves, and like they can't keep these secrets any longer. Like the time's up. Like times are changing. You can't keep running this business of religion and keep fooling people any longer.
And we're in the midst of a huge spiritual awakening. Lots of people are opening their eyes to the reality around them. They're, awakening to the matrix and not falling for the Kool-Aid anymore. It's not working for our society anymore.
So, Total, if you feel like something shifted in your life and your experience, and it just doesn't set right like it used to, you're not alone. Like, don't question or doubt this intuition.
Yeah, and if you're doubting your doubts, like some of the church people say,
we came from a religion that taught us to doubt our doubts. Like, don't trust yourself. Just keep listening to us. We're going to tell you everything you need to know. You don't ever have to research it. We got all the answers. We'll just spoon feed it to you.
And only read stuff that's written or
filtered, watered down,
approved
curriculum. Like, it just drove me crazy. Like, it drives me crazy. Like, just the watered down, filtered PR. Everything's about maintaining the image of the church, maintaining the image of this beautiful flower religion that has happy families and wonderful heavens.
Yeah, and if you don't know us, we're Nathan and Nicole Clark. We are Choose an Amazing Life brand, but we are here to tell our story of how we went from Mormon to mystic, which we consider ourselves very spiritual people, but not religious in any way anymore.
And a lot of people that leave religion, and they may identify as agnostic, atheist, whatever. I mean, from my perspective, there's no judgment or wrong. All of us have different paths. Yeah. Our path maybe not be your path, and that's totally fine.
We came from a dogmatic, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is we have the only fullness of the gospel. Like a lot of churches out there have bits and pieces of the truth, but we have the only one that has all of it.
I mean,
and so now we're from the standpoint of like everyone out there is living their own journey, and there's literally no way that one person or one organization or church has the fullness of all the truth.
Can you
everyone's path is valid.
Just fathoming the idea that one religion, organization, person would have all the answers to everything, and they're just the more we researched, the more we delved into it. When our time came, the more questions there were. And there weren't clear, valid answers, especially in the church curriculum. Like nobody was even in a space to really even understand us or give us any answers to questions that we really wanted to know.
And we'd heard the same Sunday school answers every single Sunday for 38 years. I think I was 38 when we started.
Yeah, I think it was.
We left about 5 years ago. Well, probably 6 years mental. Ago. He started first, and I was really upset. It caused a really big rift in our marriage.
It can definitely cause some challenges in your relationship, and that's you just have to know that going in and give people space and benefit to believe how they want to believe.
So for you, what sparked your interest in looking outside of the box? Because for me, that was really triggering, but obviously I'm now on the same page. But tell them how you started.
Yeah, so for me, I started mostly just researching. Like I had kind of researched the history. A lot of it didn't make sense. I've been on farms, thefarms.com. I've gone through page and page of different things, different questions I had, and ultimately it just didn't add up. Like historically, dogmatically, doctrinally, like what was taught across the pulpit was not what was in the scriptures. Was not what there just wasn't evidence for it. And there was this growing dissonance inside of me that just didn't make sense.
He would often say, by their fruits you shall know them, but where are the fruits of the gospel? Where are the fruits that the prophets keep saying? They're not having any modern day revelation.
Exactly. And ultimately that was the biggest thing for me, was just this fakeness, this artificial appearance. We were putting on appearances and talking about holiness, but not actually exhibiting it. We were living on someone else's experience from 2,000 years ago, not our own. And there wasn't any real evidence of real power. The kingdom of God was in not just in word but in power, and I just didn't see it. There's just complete absence of these gifts and fruits of the Spirit that were apparently supposed to be evidence of our faith and evidence of the validity of the church's claims, and they just weren't. And it just it's come to that point where you realize Santa's not real, but you still want to kind of play along. Yeah. That he's real, and I couldn't do it anymore.
And it's so hard to leave. I couldn't
do it anymore.
Extract yourself from the programming and the indoctrination for years, because both of us were raised LDS. We were raised with very strong, firm families
We
and
were
generational family history in the church.
we were hardcore as hardcore would get as far as Mormon. I mean, I would fast every Sunday for years. We didn't watch TV on Sunday. No Coke, no caffeine, obviously.
Coke as in Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. Yeah, Coke as in Coca-Cola. If you want to take the other kind.
We definitely didn't do the other kind either. Like, we were very straight arrow. Like, if you would like ask either of our families, they would probably have said that we were the last two that they would ever thought
they really would
leave, because we were the ones that never questioned the gospel. We were full steam ahead. We both served full-time missions. We got married in the temple. All 6 of our children, well, 5 of our children got baptized, and we just were all in. We were the ones in our wards that were serving and showing up.
I was in the bishopric. I was like teaching like people. People. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, we served high leadership callings and went to the temple as regularly as we could, even though we lived far away from it. We did all the things, and we still found ourselves feeling like, is this all there is? Like,
seriously.
Like, after a while, you live the gospel. They tell you that this is what brings you the most joy and happiness in life. And like, for a woman, it's like, this is your ultimate calling, is to have children and then raise them up into the gospel. That's your end all be all. That's where you find your worth. That's where you find your meaning and your purpose. And after a while, it felt like, this is kind of like hell.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
how am I supposed to be doing this?
We were giving lip service to this idea of heaven in some future moment, but like experiencing a current hell, and that was kind of the.
And the indoctrination is endure to the end.
Exactly.
Once you endure through this whole lifetime, then you will enjoy reap the benefits of heaven.
Somehow we were convinced that we had to like go through hell now to be worthy of some idea of future heaven.
And like, somehow there's a reward for how much suffering you can
endure.
endure.
The more you suffer, the so for you, like, what would you say was the main?
Well, he had started deconstructing probably 2016-ish or so.
Yeah, I've been studying for a while, but he
had given me a few books and things to read, but I really just wasn't willing. I wasn't there. I was very angry with him and questioning our marriage and all the things. And then in 2017, my dad passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, and that very night, Nate was led to a movie that I think was the catalyst for my change. It was called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. You've probably heard of it. It's all about the law of attraction, and I had never heard anything about the power of our thoughts. We create our own reality. What you focus on expands. All of that was brand new to me. Outside of the doctrine of the church, where I was only focused on that my whole life, this was mind expanding and mind blowing to me, to the point where I was like, I gotta learn more about this. So I went down the rabbit hole. Then I started reading Dr. Joe Dispenza and listening to Abraham Hicks and Bruce Lipton and Neil Donald Walsh, so many of these different spiritual New Age gurus. And that started leading me more towards meditation and finding my answers within, and realizing that we are all God, that we are all one, that we are all already whole and complete and worthy, and we don't have to prove ourselves. And it was just the more I did that, the more it lit me up, the more it got me excited about life again, and gave me, an inner knowing that I was already good enough. I didn't have to check off this endless list of visiting, teaching, studying my scriptures every night, teaching my children, having scripture study and prayer every single day, doing family home evening, going to the temple, going to church every single Sunday and Wednesday to serve the youth. There's just endless lists of things to do, and it was still never good enough.
Yeah,
it just felt you're always trying to prove yourself.
Exactly. Why is it in church culture that the rates of depression are astronomical? And a lot of time, and a lot of it's closet depression, but just even from statistics, the rates of depression, of suicide, even unfortunately.
You look at the statistics for Utah alone, where it has the highest.
The highest concentration of LDS. Yeah. It's pretty alarming. For a faith that espouses, the ultimate plan to happiness, that happiness isn't necessarily reflected in its members.
We did feel happy, I think, for most of our years and most of our marriage. I'm not going to discount that. There were a lot of moments of happiness, and there were a lot of family unit. I loved the idea of the church. Literally, wherever you go in the whole world, you have a family unit, you have that camaraderie, that unity.
Yeah.
But once you start questioning it, you immediately feel like an outcast. You feel like you don't belong anymore, and you start like feeling unworthy. You start feeling guilty, all sorts of shame.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me started on the shame you feel for questioning it and actually doubting or going with your confirmation bias and all the things that you've been questioning for years and putting on a shelf.
So what was it? What was it like with your experience with family or with members that you knew once you were kind of more vocal in public about some of your concerns,
that
doubts,
was the
questions?
hardest part, I think, was recognizing that. Well, let's just go back before that. Before we even announced it to family or anything, like, because we didn't really talk about that. I probably went to church for an entire year after, what do they call it, PMO? Like, I was physically in but mentally out.
Yeah, I mean,
where I went for a whole year, and every Sunday I was just like, Nate, like, why are we still going? Like, what are we doing here? It doesn't feel good anymore. It actually felt restrictive.
Yeah.
And very difficult to sit through. I was primary pianist, and we just had our last baby, Emberly, and she was probably about 6 months old. You know, during that whole time, she was a baby. And I was just like, every Sunday we'd drive home, and I'd be like, why are we still going? I really don't feel good. And then I got a throat issue, and I still have it today, but it's much better now, where I couldn't breathe very well. And during the whole pregnancy with Emberly, I thought it was asthma. We had multiple tests, but you can't really get tested with a baby in your stomach or your womb or whatever. So it took until she was about 6 months old for us to figure out that it was a throat issue. My throat had literally been constricting to the size of a little tiny straw and very hard to breathe through. And I ended up needing throat surgery. But what was cool was that Nate and I had gone to a Dr. Joe Dispenza week-long retreat in Cancun, Mexico, where in our little group we had learned about chakras, and we talked to all the people. Like, they divide us up in like thousands of people. You get a group of like 50, and in this group of 50 there were probably like at least 10, if not more, women who were having throat issues. And I thought that was really weird.
Yeah,
at the
it was
time,
common.
At the time it was me breathing. We didn't realize it was in my throat, but they explained that the throat chakra represents speaking your truth, and if you're not speaking your truth, you can create disease in the chakra that represents that area of your body. So here I am a year later, after having Emberly, because we were pregnant with her there, recognizing that, oh my goodness, it's my throat chakra. I'm not speaking my truth. Like, I've recognized for over a year now that the gospel is no longer aligning with where my soul is. It doesn't feel good to me anymore. And I'm seeing how much harm it actually is creating in so many lives. While I do still believe it's very good for a lot of people and the level of consciousness they're at, it can serve a lot of people. At the same time, it's harming and hurting so many other people. So it's not the end-all be-all of happiness and joy.
Yeah.
So then it took me forever, and I think that's why my throat was constricting, because I didn't want to tell my mom.
Yeah, you were scared. You were really terrified to tell your mom.
Yeah, and then I was terrified when I started going live on Facebook. I started telling my story and sharing the doubts I was having, and it was so scary. Like, because first of all, my Facebook feed is mostly family and friends that I've acquired after years and years of being in the church and living so many places. I've lived in like over 38 houses and places around the world. All of my family up until that point was built in church congregations. Like, you know, that's what I love about the church.
That's the main benefit, I think, and that's the draw, and that's how they can keep you in there is
yeah, family. Your family becomes the church.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Everywhere you go, you have people that help move, help you, serve you. They bring you food when you have a baby. Like, there's so much good that happens in those congregations. And then when you start questioning it, you immediately feel like,
and like that kind of led you down this rabbit hole of, I mean, you had to have throat surgery, obviously, but it kind of brought up all this suppressed emotion that you've had you didn't even know, because you didn't know any better about like just women's roles versus men's,
the
and patriarchy and everything else.
Yes, as a woman, you feel like your role is to be submissive. It's to quiet yourself, to not speak your truth, to you know, you can share ideas, but only if you're asked, or only if you get permission. You have to raise your hand, you know, because the authority figures in the church are always men. And then you start wondering, like, the
priesthood's such a blessing in your home.
Yeah, if I'm supposed to be like sharing, you know, all this joy and whatever I was feeling from, you know, starting to question my my belief system and actually finding joy elsewhere, the guilt and the shame were like my number one limiting belief was, if I start sharing this, I'll lead other people to hell.
Yeah.
Like, I literally believe that. Like, I was terrified of hurting other people. Because,
that conditioning is so deep in us.
Yeah. That was really hard. And then, I was worried about telling our kids.
Yeah.
We thought that we had done, like, a fantastic job of indoctrinating them. We thought that they were all in.
Gratefully they kind of were ahead of us in some regard there.
I remember when I went to the doctor and found out that it was my throat issue, and everything like clicked in my head like a puzzle put together, like, I have to leave or else I literally am physically going to die. I told my kids I'm not going back. Nate had to go serve in the bishopric that day, and he was like,
And they were like, where's your wife? She's just home. She's just home.
I announced to our kids, and they like celebrated.
Yeah, they were like celebrating.
The two oldest were like, yes! Are you serious? We don't have to go?
We don't have to go?
And I was like, oh. Like, I was shocked. Because I truly believed, like, they were, 15 and 14 at the time, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, they were in young men and young women, and they were just, like, celebrating. They're like, hallelujah, I couldn't wait to turn 18, so I never had to go again. And we were like,
yeah,
really?
Little did we know.
They had held that truth from us for years, And yeah, granted, our ward, it was very small here. We're in a very small rural town in Ohio, and it wasn't the best atmosphere or congregation. Yeah. We did tons of work for it, and that's another thing that made me feel guilty leaving, was because we're leaving them in a lurch because we were doing so much of the work. I was the primary pianist and the organist for so many years, and he was a leader. Like, we just did so many things in addition to just church service, but like cleaning the chapel and, serving in the youth every week and bringing our kids there who were half of the youth program. So it felt really bad leaving, but at the same time, seeing my kids' reactions and how excited they were to not have to go back was a huge eye-opener.
Yeah, for sure.
Me, it was like, oh, maybe they have hated this their whole life and I just didn't know. And that ultimately has brought us closer together as a family. I think it's helped us become a lot better parents. It's definitely helped our marriage.
Sure.
To be free from the box, free from the conformity, and really just like not being able to express our true essence of like who we really are. A lot of us were like masked and shadowed and held back.
I mean, you're subordinated to these roles, to the roles of mother, roles of father, roles of whatever is related to priesthood and motherhood, and you don't even realize what's like suppressed or not even ever allowed to be expressed because you have to conform. And that's like how deep the conditioning is. Once you're out of there, you're like, man, this is crazy that like somehow I have to pay 10% of my income to go into the temple to be worthy. And you're like, worthiness just is. It's not something you earn. It's not something you can grow into or become. It's just something that is. Why would I need to pay 10% of my income? Like, it's just that, like, there's this whole litany of things that your eyes begin to be open to that literally, like, you just couldn't see it before. Like, it's like the church keeps you, like, wants you to just see like this and not see anything outside of it. And it's like, that never made any sense to me. Like, the truth is never hurt by investigation. It's never like, in the opposite. It's actually strengthened. So that was always the weird thing. Like, they're so protective of what you read and what you don't read and who you listen to or don't listen to.
And President Nelson, the current prophet, actually just came out with a quote during this last conference that ruffled a lot of feathers around that. He said, literally, do not listen to anyone who's a non-believer. Like, what kind of counsel is that?
I couldn't believe he said that.
Like, if Nate left the church and then I all of a sudden couldn't take counsel from my husband because I was still all in, like, that would have not been good for our marriage.
I couldn't believe he said that. I mean, I guess to my eyes, anybody who's not like totally looking like this through the lens would be like, something's up here. Why would you even say that? So
yeah, and since we've left, we've both done tons of research. I've read lots of books on cults and leaving high demand religions or things of that nature.
It's picture perfect cult. Like, it's just a little cloaked, a little, because the church is so freaking wealthy. And the other thing, I mean, I can go on and on, but the other thing that drove me crazy once I did some research while still in the church is making $7-8 billion a year in tithing, and it's all going, most of it's going through BYU and other foundations and being invested, and not actually, going to where it could be of good use. And it's just like the hypocrisy was so blatant. I'm like, how can you, if people just knew the numbers, like anybody with half a sense of like, of being unbiased would be like, something's up here.
Yeah, but unfortunately most of us live with confirmation bias.
Yeah, we do.
We only read things, we only listen to things, we only do things that we're taught are within our belief system. So with cults, with people with that mentality, they're not going to listen to something like this and be inspired to check outside of the box. What they're going to do is read more material inside of the box, which is fascinating when you look about Mormon history, and a lot of people who have left the church who were in high authority kind of positions or powerful positions in the church, most of them, like I found on TikTok and the ex-Mormon community, were people who were serving and reading and studying the church doctrine, the church history, exactly. The things that were in the actual history of the church is what made them actually leave.
Like the more well-informed you are, the better off you are. Obviously, it's very much like the government in some ways, that the desire to keep you somewhat ignorant, and so you're sort of dependent on someone else to tell you what to believe, what to think, what to do. And that's just like, I couldn't stand that anymore. Like, I was so tired of watered down conference talks and watered down like PR doctrine. Like it just never, it didn't make any sense. It just rubbed me the wrong way, and it was clearly like it was all part of this bigger scheme to keep you,
to make you a sheep.
Exactly.
You taught, follow the shepherd.
Exactly.
You are a sheep. And when you look at sheep, they're literally stupid. Mm-hmm. They're not smart animals.
They're not.
They don't have a lot of brain cells to tell them to lead themselves.
No.
Or to critically think. And our educational system and our religious system has highly underestimated or purposely, intentionally made us feel like we cannot think outside of the box. We're not taught to critically think. We're not taught to question authority. We're not taught to actually look at what we're being taught with a critical eye.
Yeah.
We're taught to just accept it, embrace it, live it full-heartedly, or else.
Exactly.
The fear-mongering and the control is what keeps people in.
Exactly.
Because you're so afraid to leave. You're so afraid to question it. You're so afraid to go outside of the box because all the consequences that we've been taught are going to happen actually don't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they will in eternity.
Like we've been taught to worship and pay subservience and obeisance to an idea, like that just doesn't have any basis in reality. Once you get out, once you're kind of outside the box and look from the outside in, it's like, what in the world was I thinking? And granted, you don't know any better. I mean, it's just pure, human, conditioning. That's just part and parcel of growing up and being raised that way, of just being exposed to it. But
so what are some of the things that you would say that the church teaches to help us, to make us afraid, to control us, to keep us in?
Well, the guilt is the only thing they have. I mean, they try to guilt you into serving. They try to guilt you into, you can't live with your family forever. Only if you're obedient can you reap these blessings. And it was just kind of the almost the slapping you on the back and sort of forcing you to do things under the guise of duty, under the guise of responsibility. Like, especially holding the priesthood, like you're required as a priesthood holder to, maintain a certain standard of life. You're not allowed to masturbate. You're not allowed to look at porn. You can't, obviously the word of wisdom, alcohol, whatever else. But it's just sort of this.
Because if you do, what happens?
Well, you lose your temple blessings. You can be,
you lose the priesthood power. You're not worthy anymore. You can't live with your family for eternity. You're not worthy of the temple. You can't take the sacrament.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many consequences that we're taught that make us stay.
Exactly.
Right? And I think a lot of people, what I've learned actually since leaving, is that probably 80%, if not more, of the people who actually go every Sunday aren't all in.
No.
They don't really understand all the doctrine and dogma that is being preached every week, or that has been taught in the past and is now being kind of whitewashed. They're not aware of those things.
Yeah, they really are.
Or they're very nuanced, and they only go because they want the camaraderie and the community and the feeling of family.
Yeah.
Which is definitely the hardest part for us, has been like feeling very alone.
Yeah, I mean,
feeling
that's
lonely in our beliefs, and when you leave, you don't have that support system anymore.
no, you don't. You don't.
They're not quite as bad as like Jehovah's Witnesses, where they completely banish you, but they also don't want to get to know who you are anymore. They don't ask questions.
They're not interested in asking questions. Like,
They
they're
don't
not
wanna know why
interested
you
in
left.
knowing like anything. Like, it's just like
Yeah,
if
they're scared.
it's just they like to talk and talk and talk, but just not listen. It's just so like interesting, paradoxical.
They go into a conversation with us to convert us back or to save us, rather than to get to know us or question what made us leave.
And I understand there's just not a space in their brains to even comprehend how you could still be happier than you ever were outside of the plan of salvation, or keeping your covenants, or whatever verbiage they want to use to make themselves feel better about themselves.
Yeah, and
and
that was the
justify
thing,
their
like,
own little.
for me, like growing up in this religion and having served a mission and everything, and I know for you as well, you kind of have this mentality of, it is my duty and obligation to serve mankind, every single person
Absolutely.
I meet. There's an ulterior motive behind it, to save them,
Absolutely.
to fix them, to help them be happy, because it's not possible outside of the
Exactly.
gospel. And I think that was one of the things that actually ultimately broke my shelf, was moving here in this very, very Christian, rural Bible Belt community. I met so many people in different religions. I had a really good friend who was Muslim, a really good friend who was Baptist, a really good friend who was Catholic.
Sure.
Like, there's the whole spectrum of all these different Christian beliefs and outside of Christianity. And every single one of these women inspired me. They lived happy lives. They were close to their family. They were close to God. They had a radiant countenance. All the things that I taught that were only possible in Mormonism, I saw in my friends who weren't who weren't in the same religion.
Absolutely.
I actually had Bible studies with a lot of these women so we could learn from each other and grow. And it eventually ended up making me question everything, because it was like, they're happier than what the church told me that
somehow
people could be.
this ethnocentric, egotistical view that the church has implanted in you, that all good belongs to Mormonism, it just starts to crumble.
And you recognize that, like, Mormons consist of, what is it, like 1.01
exactly 0.02% of the population,
of 8 billion people. There's like less than 13 million,
and
of that number, there's probably not even half of that
like
are actually active.
I know. I'm just curious, like, just like extremely curious, like, how is it that, like, a person of integrity that, like, knows something's up with the church, that knows, like, this isn't all that it espouses to be, like, can in good integrity and conscience continue to, like, pay lip service to the same doctrine, pay 10% of their income, and still go through the same motions, even though they know something's not right.
Well,
I'm just curious.
Maybe they know something, but they're not willing to really accept it. Because when I've read a lot about cult mentality, what happens is, even when, like, let's just say, who is the member of the RLDS that he was a prophet? Warren Jeffs. He prophesied that the world would end at a certain year.
Sure.
And all these FLDS members were like, okay, when that happens, we will all be exalted and be with our prophet forever. That date came, it didn't happen, and what did they do? They buckled down. Most of them buckled down and believed even more and said, oh, well, he was just, something happened, that they made excuses, basically, is what happens. And in every single cult that I've studied, they do the same thing. When their prophet is proven wrong, or when something contradicts their confirmation bias, they immediately buckle down and start trying even harder to prove to other people that they're correct, or to indoctrinate other people or convert them, because the confirmation bias is too vast, too strong, too much. That their nervous system can't handle it, their brains can't handle it, so they just buckle down into the belief system rather than feeling their feelings and allowing themselves to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because we as humans hate to be wrong.
No, it's absolutely right.
We hate to be proven wrong, and when something contradicts what we've been taught is the only right way, it is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of just energy and courage and bravery, even to be open to that fact, first of all, and second of all, to, take the steps and actions, like, and practically to demonstrate that, I'm not going to follow this anymore. I'm not going to keep paying my money to this business empire that espouses that it saves families, but huge homophobia,
ultimately is tearing a lot of families apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the current doctrine of, don't listen to any non-believer, that's not supporting family togetherness, especially if one spouse is in, one spouse is out.
No.
The doctrine that they changed of the LDS or the LGBT families, the kids couldn't get baptized for many years. Like, there's so many things that were just like, that doesn't feel good to me.
But I mean, yeah, but I mean, ultimately for both of us though, it was really like, there's no way that this little church organization that started in 1830 that it has all these things can espouse all the truth and be the only one right way. There's just no way.
Well, you start seeing all the other good people that are out there and how beautiful other people and other beliefs are, and you start thinking,
and that was for both of us, like this sense of expansiveness that just there's so much truth and goodness and love and light everywhere, not just in this one little teeny box that we call Mormonism, that I want to explore, that I want to understand, that I want to appreciate, that I want to see and experience. And that was kind of sort of this mystic part of us that wanted to come out, I think, that wanted to just explore like spirituality from a broader lens, to explore life and meaning and purpose from just a much broader lens than Mormonism could ever give us.
Yeah, and for a lot of Mormons, I think we stay in because of the idea of eternal life with our families and things. And that's something that I still hold on to and maintain, just not in the same way. Same as like this concept of there's a God who's a fatherly figure who loves us unconditionally, but somehow there are so many conditions to earn his love and be worthy of. Now I truly believe that we are all God, that we are all love, and that we're innately whole and complete and perfect in and of ourselves without having to prove anything or do anything or be anything different than who we came here to be. And sure, we can learn and grow and gain emotional awareness and change and transform, but all that's changing and transforming into is who we already are and who we already came here as, before all the conditioning and programming and learning that we're not enough or good enough or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, hope you like this video. Stay tuned for more.
Okay.
And we can talk about more.
I guess we're ending.
I think this is worthy of a whole other video, but
okay.
We'll edit it out.
Stay tuned for part 2, I guess.
Stay tuned for part 2.